that someone thinks is appropriate to do. Put an iron on his face? No. Absolutely not. I will not say it. I don't care. Fire me. I don't care.
Ever wonder if TV executives in the past were just throwing darts at a board of crazy ideas? Some sitcoms weren't just shows. They were gloriously unhinged experiments that defied all logic. We're unearthing the forgotten gems so bizarre, you'll swear they were a myth. Get ready to go on a journey through television's weirdest and most wonderful failures, the 15 sitcoms that got canceled way too soon. 1. It Takes Two.
I trust neatness doesn't count. No, it's band audition, and we've really got a shot this time.
Oh, good luck, honey. Are you guys ready?
Pretty much, except for our new lead singer.
The idea of this sitcom was, on the surface, very normal and even forward-thinking for its time. It was a family comedy about a husband and wife in Chicago who both had demanding jobs and were raising their 2 teenage kids. The husband, Dr. Sam Stratford, was a successful surgeon. The wife, Molly, was a smart lawyer who had just been made an assistant district attorney. The show explored the then-modern idea of a superwoman trying to have it all, balancing a powerful career with family life. It was created by Susan Harris, the same writer behind the famous hit show, Soap. The mind-blowing part of this show isn't the idea, it's the cast. This completely forgotten sitcom, which ran for only 1 season, starred an almost unbelievable group of past and future stars. The dad was played by Richard Crenna, the actor famous as Colonel Trotman from the Rambo movies. The mom was played by Oscar and Emmy winner Patty Duke. And who played their 2 teenage children? A young Helen Hunt, who would go on to win an Oscar and star in the hit sitcom Mad About You, and a young Anthony Edwards, who would become a huge star as Dr. Mark Green on the massive hit medical drama EIR. The fact that a show with that much pure talent in its main cast could be made, air for 22 episodes, and then almost completely disappear from our collective memory is, in its own way, one of the most mind-blowing stories on this list. A show full of future superstars that no one remembers is truly strange. But our next show also featured a cast of future comedy legends, all working together on a show that was doomed from the start. 2. On the Rocks.
I don't know how to tell you this, but there is among us a thief. Pardon me, Fuentes, but at last count there were 614 thieves in here.
In the middle of the 1970s, sitcoms were usually set in cozy homes, busy offices, or friendly bars. These were places everyone could recognize. So, in 1975, the network ABC decided to take a huge risk with a comedy set in a place that nobody associates with laughter, a minimum security prison. On the Rocks was the American version of a popular British sitcom called Porridge. The show followed a group of inmates at a prison in New York as they tried to get through their daily lives behind bars. The main characters were a bunch of small-time crooks and lovable losers. Their leader was a guy named Hector Fuentes, who had seen it all and knew how to work the system. The comedy came from them trying to run little scams to make their lives a bit better, their constant arguments with the mean and lazy prison guards, and just trying to deal with the crushing boredom of prison life. At first glance, it might seem harmless, but the very idea of a sitcom about prisoners was a huge deal for American TV back then. The show tried to find humor in a really depressing place, an idea that was way ahead of its time. It made the people in charge of the network super nervous. Truth be told, it walked a fine line between silly jokes and dark humor. While some critics loved it for being so daring, it made a lot of viewers at home feel uncomfortable. The idea of laughing at guys in prison was just too much for many people, and the show was canceled after only 1 season. A prison sitcom was a daring social experiment, but it was still about humans. The next show on our list threw humanity out the window for a concept so strange, it's hard to believe it was real. Moondrum Murder Smith.
So if you'd like to hear more about my new show, Mr. Smith, call me at 1-900-40-SMITH, and I'll tell you all about it.
If you thought a show about a flying nun was weird, you need to brace yourself. The idea behind Mr. Smith is so completely, totally bizarre, it sounds like someone made it up as a dare. A scientist is working with an orangutan named Cha-Cha. Through his experiments, which involved a special drink and a brain zapping machine, he finds out that Cha-Cha has a genius-level IQ, and more importantly, can talk. The orangutan, who now wants to be called Mr. Smith, becomes a huge celebrity. He's smart, speaks beautifully, and has a simple wisdom that humans just don't get. But here is where it gets truly unbelievable. Mr. Smith becomes so famous for his intelligence that he's brought to Washington, D.C. to work as a political advisor. That's right. This was a weekly sitcom about a talking orangutan in a suit solving America's biggest problems. The show had Mr. Smith, who was played by a real orangutan for movement and a puppet head for talking scenes, giving brilliant advice to clueless politicians. In a normal episode, a stuffy senator would be struggling with a big problem. Mr. Smith, after carefully peeling a banana, would point out a simple solution that no one else could see, making the human look silly. The show was a huge gamble that just didn't work. It was too weird to be a political show and too smart to be a simple family show. It was canceled after just 13 episodes, and the amazing idea of an ape running the country has been almost totally forgotten. A talking ape was just too much for audiences to handle. But what happens when a show has a totally normal, can't-miss idea and still fails? That's a different kind of disaster. 4. Angie.
Are you late? I didn't even notice the time. That's true. She was too busy watching the doors.
On the surface, Angie had a classic, charming idea that felt like it was born for success. It was a Cinderella story for the 1970s. Angie Falco was a waitress from a working-class neighborhood in Philadelphia with a loud, loving Italian-American family. One day, she meets a handsome, rich doctor named Brad Benson. They fall in love, and in the very first episode, they get married. The show was made by the famous producer Gary Marshall and starred Donna Pescow, who was a huge star after her role in the movie Saturday Night Fever. It seemed like a guaranteed hit that would be on for years. And then something totally unexpected happened. It was a massive hit. Angie started in the middle of the TV season and became one of the most watched shows of the year almost overnight. People loved the chemistry between the two main actors and the comedy of Angie's loud family trying to deal with Brad's snobby, super-rich world. The mind-blowing part of this story isn't the idea, but how fast it all fell apart. Here's the thing, the whole point of the show, the big question of, will these two people from different worlds make it work? Logically, was basically answered as soon as they got married. The writers had nowhere else to go. After a huge first season, the ratings for the second season completely crashed as people got bored. Viewers lost interest almost instantly. The show was quickly canceled, making it a shocking example of a show that was too successful, too quickly, for its own good. The show burned through its great idea in record time. But our next show took a beloved TV genre and flipped it on its head, with hilarious results that sadly not enough people saw. 5. Best of the West.
Who are you?
Folks call me Frog.
Oh, what's your real name?
Frog.
The Western was one of television's most popular types of shows. For years, shows like Gunsmoke and Bonanza were all about serious heroes and intense shootouts. So, in 1981, making a weekly sitcom that was a straight-up silly parody of the Western was a truly mind-blowing idea. Best of the West was that show. It was about Sam Best, a Civil War veteran from Philadelphia who was clumsy and hated fighting. He moves his family out west to start a new life. Through a series of silly mistakes, he accidentally gets a reputation as a deadly gunslinger and is made the sheriff of a wild little town called Copper Creek. Sam was the complete opposite of a typical Western hero. He couldn't shoot a gun, he was awkward, and he preferred to solve problems by talking, which really frustrated the townspeople, who were used to solving things with fists and guns. He was joined by his sassy wife, Elvira, and his smart-mouthed son, Daniel. The main bad guy was the town's powerful and crooked saloon owner, Parker Tillman. The show was a clever and gentle spoof of all the classic Western movies and shows. It felt a lot like the movie Blazing Saddles, but made for a family audience. Critics really liked it for its smart writing and fun humor, but it never found a big audience. It was canceled after one season, but it remains a forgotten treasure, a mind-blowing attempt to make fun of John Wayne on primetime TV. Making fun of a whole genre was a bold move. But an even bolder move is taking beloved characters from a massive hit show and giving them their own series, a decision that can go horribly wrong. The Ropers.
I saw him plain as anything. He was looking in our bedroom window and yawning.
You must have been getting undressed.
The mind-blowing part of The Ropers isn't its idea, which was pretty standard for a sitcom. It's the completely confusing network decision that led to the show being made in the first place, a move that ended up hurting one of the biggest TV hits of the time. Stanley and Helen Roper were the beloved, constantly bickering and romantically challenged landlords on the show Three's Company. They were the perfect supporting characters, the grumpy older people reacting to all the crazy stuff happening with the young people upstairs. Their arguments were a huge part of what made Three's Company so funny. Here's where it all went sideways. A TV executive, in a moment that can only be explained by a mad grab for ratings, decided these two characters could carry their own show. So they were spun off into a new series where they sold their apartment building and moved into a fancy, rich neighborhood. The whole idea was to watch them clash with their new, snobby neighbors. The problem was, when you took them away from Jack, Janet, and Chrissy, the Ropers were just a miserable, arguing couple. Their one joke, which was hilarious in small amounts on Three's Company, became repetitive and kind of sad when it was the focus of the whole show. The series was a ratings failure and was canceled after 2 seasons. The truly mind-blowing part is that the network took 2 key ingredients out of a hit show, which made the original show weaker and created a new show that failed. It was a huge mistake that fans still talk about today. It was a spin-off that should have never happened. But our next show wasn't a spin-off. It was an original idea so strange and so ahead of its time, you'll wonder if you dreamed it. 7. The Ugliest Girl in Town.
Why should just Tim be married? Why not Timmy too? After all, she's a lovely girl with a charming personality.
Thanks for the flattery, buddy, but I'm really not in the mood for it.
We're going back to the late 1960s for this one because its idea is so uniquely mind-blowing and so bizarre in its gender-bending comedy that it feels like it should have been made 20 years later. The show is about a Hollywood talent agent who sees a photo of a hippie with shaggy hair in a London magazine. He becomes convinced that this person is the perfect new face for fashion, the next big female model for the swinging 60s. The wild part is, the hippie is actually a man named Timothy. The agent saw the photo right after Timothy got caught in a rainstorm, which made his hair look long and girly. Desperate for money so he can move to Hollywood to be with his actress girlfriend, Timothy agrees to the plan. He puts on a wig, a mini dress, starts calling himself Timmy, and somehow becomes the hottest fashion model in the world. The entire show was about his crazy attempts to keep his real gender a secret from everyone, including the modeling agency and his own girlfriend, who just thinks Timmy is her boyfriend's really attractive sister. The show was a one-joke idea that was both confusing and really uncomfortable for people in 1968. It was a bizarre, progressive comedy that audiences were definitely not ready for. It was canceled after 1 season and has been almost completely forgotten, a truly mind-blowing concept that was simply too strange for its time. A man pretending to be a woman was a bridge too far in the 60s, but a decade later, another show would tackle a body-bending premise and prove that some ideas are better left as movies. 8. Turnabout. The body swap comedy was a popular movie idea, giving us classics like Freaky Friday. It's a great concept for a 90-minute story where the shock and fun of the idea can carry the whole plot. So, in 1979, the network NBC, in its desperation for a hit show, decided to take that big idea and stretch it out into a weekly sitcom. In Turnabout, a rich, arguing married couple, Sam and Penny, magically switch bodies after they touch a weird statue in their living room. Sam, a grumpy sports writer, suddenly finds himself in his wife's body, played by Sharon Gless, dealing with her powerful job at a makeup company. Penny finds herself in her husband's body, trying to deal with the macho world of sports. The first episode was pretty funny, getting all the easy jokes you'd expect, like a man trying to put on makeup or a woman trying to figure out how to use a men's restroom. But nobody saw this coming. The show had absolutely nowhere to go after that. The fun of the idea wore off almost immediately. As a weekly series, it was a dead end. How many weeks can you watch the same two characters complain about being in each other's bodies before it gets boring? The writers ran out of ideas almost right away, and the stories became more and more desperate and silly. The show was canceled after just 7 episodes. It was a fascinating and mind-blowing failure that proved some ideas just don't have enough gas to last more than a couple of hours. Switching bodies was a dead end. But what if instead of switching bodies, you just had to share your house with someone from the great beyond? The next show explored that, with a very weird twist. 9. Jennifer Slept Here.
You're not banging that ball around. You got the stereo up so high, I can hardly think.
Oh, and what about you at 3 a.m. in the morning? I'm trying to sleep and you got your TV set up there blaring out your old movies.
The 1980s were obsessed with high-concept family comedies that mixed normal life with supernatural stuff, and this one is a perfect example. The show was about the ghost of a glamorous movie star from the golden age of Hollywood named Jennifer Farrell. After her tragic passing, her friendly ghost decides to stick around and haunt her old mansion in Beverly Hills. A new family, the Elliots, moves in from New York, with no idea that their new home comes with a ghost roommate. It all boils down to this one twist, which was the entire point of the show and also its biggest problem. For reasons that were never explained by ghost rules, only the family's awkward teenage son, Joey, could see and hear Jennifer's ghost. This set up a predictable but bizarre situation every week. Joey would have a classic teenage problem, like a bully at school or trouble talking to a girl, and Jennifer would use her ghost powers, like walking through walls or making things float, to help him. Of course, this meant that to everyone else in his family and at school, Joey just looked like a weirdo talking to himself, reacting to invisible things, and making objects move on their own. The mind-blowing part is trying to imagine the pitch meeting for a show where the main character looks totally crazy to every other character for the entire series. It was a harmless, fluffy sitcom, but its main idea was so strange and limiting that it was canceled after just 1 season. A ghost only a teenager could see was a weird idea, but it was no weirder than taking one of the most powerful wizards in all of literature and giving him a job fixing cars. 10. Mr. Merlin.
They look like pink Alka-Seltzer.
And relief is just a swallow away.
The legend of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table is epic, timeless, and serious. It's a story of honor, betrayal, and magic. So, of course, in 1981, the network CBS decided to take one of its most important characters and turn him into a goofy sitcom character. In Mr. Merlin, the legendary wizard Merlin is still alive after hundreds of years and is now living a quiet life in modern-day San Francisco. He runs an auto repair shop under the name Max Merlin. He's getting tired of living forever and needs to find someone to pass his magical powers to before he can finally retire. He finds his student in Zach, a completely average, slightly clumsy teenager who wanders into his shop. The show was basically The Sorcerer's Apprentice meets a high school comedy. Each week, Zach would face a normal teenage problem, like a test he didn't study for or a car he wanted to buy. And he would try to solve it with a spell he wasn't skilled enough to use. The magic would always backfire in a funny way, like making a car shrink to the size of a toy. Then Merlin would have to step in, roll his eyes with the frustration of a 1,500-year-old man who has seen everything, and clean up the magical mess. The mind-blowing concept of turning one of literature's most powerful wizards into a tired mechanic and mentor to a goofy teen was pure 80s gold. While the show was charming, thanks to the wonderful actor Barnard Hughes as Merlin, its repetitive story led to its cancellation after just one season. A modern-day Merlin was a fun twist. But our next show took the special teenager idea to a whole new, out-of-this-world level. 11. The Powers of Matthew Starr.
So what do you think it means, Max?
Oh, like most dreams, it means there's part of you haven't met yet.
That's what I like, Max. Always the straight answer.
This show was a mind-blowing mix of a high school drama, a sci-fi adventure, and a fish-out-of-water comedy. It was a perfect storm of 1980s TV ideas. The premise was this. Matthew Starr is an alien prince from the far-off planet Quadris. After his home world was taken over by bad guys, he was sent to Earth as a kid to be raised in secret by his guardian, Walt. He had to wait until his incredible powers fully developed. Now he's a teenager named Matthew, trying to get through the horrors of American high school while also training to one day go back to his planet and lead a rebellion to free his people. No pressure or anything. He had a whole bunch of powers, including moving things with his mind, sending his spirit out of his body, and changing one object into another. His guardian on Earth, Walt, was supposed to teach him how to use these powers to fight evil. So, one minute, Matthew would be dealing with a pop quiz in history class or trying to ask a girl to the prom, and the next, he'd be levitating a car or fighting an alien bad guy disguised as a substitute teacher. The show was a wild mix of styles that never quite figured out what it wanted to be. It had the action of a sci-fi show, but the lighthearted feel of a teen drama. Here's a crazy fact. The show's star, Peter Barton, was badly burned in an accident with special effects during filming, and they had to stop making the show for months. It's a forgotten gem from a time when a show about an alien prince going to a pep rally seemed like a perfectly normal idea for TV. An alien prince was a wild concept, but at least he looked human. The next show on our list threw that idea out the window for a premise so ridiculous it has become a legend. 12th. Manimal. While this wasn't strictly a sitcom, the idea of Manimal is so profoundly, deeply, and hilariously mind-blowing that it has to be on this list. It represents the absolute peak of 80s high-concept craziness, a show so ridiculous it has become a beloved joke. The show's opening narration explains it all with total seriousness. Doctor, Jonathan Chase, wealthy, young, handsome, a man with the brightest of futures, a man with the darkest of pasts. From Africa's deepest jungles to civilization's highest peaks, he is the master of the secrets that divide man from animal. He is Manimal. The show was about a British professor at NYU who had the mystical power to transform into any animal he chose. He would use this power to help the police solve crimes. He would turn into a hawk to spy on criminals from above, or a black panther to chase them down dark alleys. The transformation scenes, which were made by the legendary special effects artist Stan Winston, had glowing eyes and rippling skin effects that were both cheesy and genuinely creepy. The truly mind-blowing part is that the show took itself completely seriously. It was played like a straight-faced crime drama. The concept was so completely silly that the show became a legendary flop, canceled after only 8 episodes. Its legacy is that of one of the most wonderfully bizarre TV shows ever made, a perfect example of the anything-goes attitude of 80s television. A man who turns into animals was peak 80s weirdness. But in the very same year, another show tried to bring a different kind of fantasy to life, one born from the glowing world of video games. 13. Ottoman Airing.
Since there was that judge in Fort Worth, the late Honorable Homer Banks. Don't look so shocked. Whatever Billy Truspers wants.
In the same year, and on the same network as Manimal, Ottoman was another mind-blowing, high-concept action show with a funny tone. It was a direct and obvious attempt to copy the amazing visual style of the Disney movie Tron. The idea was this: Walter Nebuchadnezzar is a nerdy, socially awkward police department computer programmer who is always ignored by his bosses. One night, he creates a super advanced computer program that generates a crime-fighting hologram named Ottoman. This hologram can leave the computer world and exist in the real world as a physical being. Ottoman was, for all practical purposes, a living video game character. He was made of pure energy and dressed in a glowing suit, lined with circuits that looked like it came straight out of Tron. He was helped by Cursor, a floating, sparkling dot of light that could draw objects into real life. If they needed a car, Cursor would draw a glowing Lamborghini, the autocar, that could make impossible 90-degree turns. If they needed a helicopter, Cursor would draw one. The show was a visual feast of early computer graphics and glowing blue lights. It was goofy, it was colorful, and its idea was a pure 80s video game fantasy come to life. Like its partner in weirdness, Manimal, it was too strange and expensive to last. It was canceled after 13 episodes, but it remains a beloved cult classic for its pure, joyful, creative weirdness. Glowing, crime-fighting holograms were amazing, but sometimes the most mind-blowing thing about a show isn't the special effects, but the sheer star power of the people in it. 14. The Flying Nun.
Well, Sister Bertrell only weighs 90 pounds, and sometimes the wind lifts her.
Lifts her where?
Up.
We have to kick things off with one of the absolute champions of bizarre sitcom ideas, a show so strange it sounds like a joke someone made up. The Flying Nun starred a very young and super charming Sally Field as Sister Bertrell. She was a new nun at a convent in sunny Puerto Rico. She was sweet, kind, and, as the show loved to point out, she only weighed 90 pounds. Now, here's the wild part. Her tiny size, plus the huge, stiff, wing-shaped hat she wore, created the perfect conditions for flight. Whenever a strong gust of wind came along, she would literally take off into the sky. The whole idea of this 3-season show was a nun who could fly, not because of superpowers or magic, but because of the science of her hat. Each episode was about Sister Bertrell getting accidentally swept into the air and landing in some kind of silly adventure. This drove the other nuns crazy, especially the head nun, Reverend Mother, who treated her flying less like a miracle and more like a silly habit she needed to break. The special effects were pure 1960s magic, usually just Sally Field hanging from a very obvious crane. It was a mind-blowing concept that somehow worked for 82 episodes, mostly thanks to Sally Field's talent. It was a show that proved no idea was too silly for television. But while the idea of flying was all about freedom, the next show on our list found comedy in a place with no freedom at all. 15. The Last Resort.
Do you mind? We're doing a little necking here.
Oh, I don't mind at all. I'd like to watch.
This is another show where the idea is less important than the mind-blowing cast of future comedy icons who were part of this early career failure. The Last Resort was a chaotic sitcom about a group of college students working a summer job at a messy, run-down resort hotel in the mountains. This was a setting famous for starting the careers of many comedians. The comedy was supposed to come from their interactions with the hotel's weird guests and their own silly attempts to avoid doing any real work. It was basically the movie Caddyshack meets a hotel sitcom, but without the great writing of either. The show itself was a forgettable, frantic mess that was canceled after 15 episodes. But the deeper you look, the stranger it gets. Let's look at the cast of completely unknown actors who were in this show. The students were played by a young Joe Pantoliano, famous as Joey Pants from The Sopranos and The Matrix, and Bronson Pinchot, who would later become a huge star as Balky on the hit show Perfect Strangers. And who was one of the writers for this forgotten failure trying to get his start in Hollywood? A young, unknown comedian named Larry David, who would later go on to co-create Seinfeld, one of the most successful sitcoms of all time, and create and star in Curb Your Enthusiasm. The mind-blowing part is imagining a world where all of these future titans of comedy were working together on a terrible sitcom that nobody remembers.